Coming up tonight, 55 Hurricane Dorian victims laid to rest. Plus, some restrictions on church services relaxed, and a woman fined for breaking curfew. You'll want to hear why.
Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Jared Higgs. Topping news tonight, which started out as a somber service of remembrance for unidentified Hurricane Dorian victims who lost their lives 8 months ago, quickly escalated into a heated protest as family members and friends of the deceased rallied against authorities after they were forced to watch the service and burial from a distance. Kyle Joaquin was on Abaco and has the story.
Y'all want us to be reasonable? People's family out there and we in the road.
Things got heated at a service of remembrance for the 55 unidentified victims who lost their lives when Hurricane Dorian struck Abaco last September.
I don't believe it if the government says it.
I saw the bodies placed in there one by one, all labeled with the DNA numbers that were done by the officials.
I got a cousin supposedly laying up there. I don't believe she's up there, but they tell me she's up there.
Most of those who showed up with placards were in disbelief that there were actually bodies in the caskets and say they weren't given the chance to offer DNA samples or see remains. Like this Abaconian who lost his wife and 2-year-old son during the storm.
18 trip I make a Nassau. 18 trip between Abaco and Nassau to try to find my wife's body and to bury that. But they don't want to give it to me.
So you haven't been able to locate her at all?
No, sir. So they spin me like a yo-yo, look like I'm stupid.
Well, I think it's a farce, because I don't think there's any bodies in those things up there. At least not the bodies what's tagged on it.
This is not right. This is not normal. This is not traditional. This is disrespectful. We are angry.
No names, just numbers. Each grave, each casket marked with a number that will be used to identify the remains of each victim once DNA results return from a lab in the U.S. Today, as the service of remembrance went on up the hill, there were dozens of loved ones who were forced to remain behind barricades.
Nobody wants their loved one to be buried, and they are not there. That's all we had asked. Are they given ample time?
Now some were allowed to get closer to the caskets for just a moment and were escorted back behind the barricades. But the protests continued and Abaco religious leaders caught the heat as well.
The family members stand with the people. Yes, but this man right now, this man Luke, wife and son, all we ask, give the people a little time to come home to see their loved ones go down.
Bishop Samuel Cornish heads a church in Abaco and lost his home during Dorian. He wasn't on the podium but stood with family members in the distance.
I didn't support being here to the funeral as to be up there. I could have sat up there with the pastors. I choose not to. I can't be a part of something like that, to watch these families down here crying and screaming and mourning, and they can't even be a part of the funeral.
Louis Schneider lost his 66-year-old sister during the storm. He and other family members showed up to protest the conditions under which the bodies were being laid to rest.
If you're asking me what I think, this has been mismanaged from the storm.
Abaco Christian Council President Albert Tinker said he lost members during the storm and felt it just like everyone else.
I stand here today as a witness and as a participant. I was on the island during the storm. Amen. My house started to come apart. All right. I had to pray. I had to ask God. I said, Jesus, I am here. You can't let this house come apart.
But protesters from down the hill shouted Judas as they felt the pastor should have stood with them rather than being on the podium.
Shame on you, Tinker! Shame on you, Tinker! Shame on you, Pastor Tinker! Shame on you, Pastor Tinker!
Still, the service was a somber one for the dozens who now received their proper burial. If any positive identification is received at the lab, family members will have the opportunity to exhume the body of their loved one and provide another burial. North Abaco MP Darren Henfield was on hand and laid a wreath at the graveside. He said despite the protests, the day needed to happen to finally lay the 55 unidentified victims to rest.
We've come a long way in 9 months, but we still got quite a ways more to go. Kyle, you were here just after the hurricane, and you're here now, so you're a witness to where we are. But there's still much more work to do. And so I want to encourage my people to be strong. Pray for these families. Pray for those who mourn today. And pray for our island. Pray for our country.
For Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Progressive Liberal Party leader Philip Davis says the families of Abaco residents who lost their lives when Hurricane Dorian leveled the island last year deserve compassion and respect, but they have received neither. Brittany McDermott has that angle.
A lack of compassion and disgraceful is how PLP leader Philip Davis described the ecumenical service for the 55 Hurricane Dorian victims whose bodies were laid to rest today. During the somber service, dozens of angry Abaco residents who were not allowed to attend wore T-shirts in memory of the loved ones they lost and vented their frustrations at how the matter was handled. He lamented the process, adding that it is impossible to not be angry at the additional heartbreak the families have been made to endure.
The handling and bungling of this whole matter just added to the grief and stress, and was not dealt with in a manner that we understand the sense of personal loss.
Davis also hit out at the fact that those bodies were buried and none of them were identified. He says 8 months after Dorian, if not all, at least some of the bodies should have been identified by now.
What has happened then to the efforts to identify bodies that they claim that they were engaged in over the last 8 months? What were the results of those efforts? Were they able to identify any of those bodies?
Only 25 persons were allowed to attend the ceremony at the public cemetery off S.E. Boodle Highway in Central Pines, Abaco. Davis questioned if it was a wise idea to hold a mass burial at a time when large groups are not allowed to gather due to COVID-19 measures.
At the very least, mass burial ought not to have been the route here. Persons ought to have been allowed to identify their loved ones and then to bury their loved ones.
As for those residents who wore T-shirts that read, "Where is your heart?" a question asked by Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis during a news conference in April, Davis said he believes it was their way of expressing their frustrations to the government.
What you saw there was a demonstration of the angst, the frustration, and the fact that those persons obviously were not listened to by the government.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Brittany McDermott.
From the pew to the parking lot, the Prime Minister released a statement today on the resumption of worship services under very specific conditions. Gillian Gray explains.
The parking lot may be the new place of worship for many, as the Office of the Prime Minister outlined several new measures for churches.
As of tomorrow, worship services may be held on all family islands cleared to resume commercial activity on the condition services are held in the sanctuary, hand sanitation is offered at the entrance, persons sit 6 feet apart, wear masks, and communion is held using disposable cups. Meanwhile, churches on New Providence, Grand Bahama, Exuma, San Salvador, Eleuthera, Bimini, and the Berry Islands can hold drive-up services no longer than an hour, which includes members remaining in their cars, no more than 4 people per car, vehicles parked 3 feet apart, and 1 offering station.
It's pretty restrictive. You're not able to leave your vehicle. And I think the time is limited to an hour. It really is a far cry from what we are accustomed to in terms of gathering as churches.
We've always been out of the 4 walls. You know, I like outside better than I like inside, you know what I mean? Because God told us to go into all the world, you know what I mean? So it's going to be something that we look forward to. And we believe that a lot of people are going to look forward to it as well.
CEO of the Hope Center, Pastor Carlos Reed, said though he welcomes the move, he believes something could have been done earlier. Kingdom Life Church Pastor Cedric Moss said his ministry does not plan to host a drive-up service and will stick to virtual services well into June.
We are going to take through the end of June just to observe and to see what's happening in the country broadly, to get a feel for whether we continue to have an increase in COVID-19 cases. We'll also be looking at the experience of some of the churches who decide to meet earlier. But we have started a plan to regather as a church, but I don't anticipate realistically that's going to be before July, August.
Pastor Moss says this is the time for churches to help those who have lost jobs and are in need. Pastor Reed agreed.
Preaching is easy. That's something that almost everybody could do. The thing is the demonstration of the preach word. You know, just like somebody saying that they love you. Don't tell me you love me. You could demonstrate that.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jillian Gray.
Thanks, Jillian. Well, police are investigating a shooting incident involving a boat captain in Abaco. According to reports, a 77-foot freight vessel carrying freight from Florida docked at Green Turtle Key around 1:20 this morning. The captain presented himself to customs officials, but reportedly got upset after being informed of the customs and brokerage fees. Authorities say he appeared to be under the influence and was advised to leave the vessel and return when he was fit to operate it. The captain reportedly returned a short time later, produced a firearm, and discharged it in the direction of the officers who were in fear for their lives and returned fire. Police could not say what condition the boat captain is in. With thousands of Bahamians out of work and unemployment set to hit an estimated 30%, Acting Labor Director John Pinder says work permits for foreign laborers will only be considered in special circumstances. Jasmine Brown reports.
We know, planes really coming to Bahamas right now, so it's difficult to come and ask me to approve a labor certificate to bring somebody in because there ain't no planes moving. Of course, they're going to tell you, listen, if you want to do it now, so when the economy opens and the airlines start to fly again, our places have already been approved. So sometimes you try to make it me. I try to make it difficult for them to do that so they can give a Bahamian an opportunity. And we see where Bahamians have been given an opportunity during this COVID-19 thing, especially in the construction field. We see Bahamians now being given an opportunity to work.
That's Acting Director of Labor John Pinder explaining how COVID-19 has altered the way work permits are scrutinized by the Department of Labor. National Insurance Minister Brenzel Roll said earlier this week that more than 30,000 people have applied for unemployment assistance. Pinder says given that fact, work permit approvals and renewals will be considered on a case-by-case basis.
Now, mind you, I am not against foreign workers because, they're cross-training throughout the world. And there are several Bahamians who are cross-training other countries. And you wouldn't want them to have a challenge because they are not a native of that particular country. So we support cross-training. But we believe that those cross-training ought to come with a Bahamian being able to pick up that skill or the training necessary to fill those vacancies when the person leaves the country.
Pinder says a part of the issue is Bahamians simply do not want to work in certain industries. He says that allows for foreign workers to get permits for jobs that Bahamians are more than qualified to handle.
You can always find employers wanting to bring in foreign laborers for several reasons, especially in the housekeeping area, the maids, living maids, and the gardeners, even farmers. A lot of Bahamians don't like to get into that farming thing. So you can always find employers wanting to do that. We're trying to discourage it from the Department of Labor and from the ministry, and from the minister's perspective. We're trying to discourage employers from wanting to bring in foreign workers if they are Bahamians qualified for it, or who can be trained to fill the various positions.
According to the most recent data from the Department of Immigration, there are 11,276 work permit holders in the country. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Still to come on Our News, dozens line up for much-needed groceries. Stay tuned. Recipients of care packages were brought to Terrace today as they shared how tough life has been during the global health and economic crisis. Dozens lined up outside Maranatha Seventh-day Adventist Church, which launched a feeding program designed to help hundreds. Georgia Bain reports.
Try. Just try. But God's being good still, because I'm here. and that's what's important. But it's been rough.
Maranatha Seventh-day Adventist Church continued its global feeding program, an initiative designed to feed 1,000 people affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Pastor Valentino Campbell said it's a joint effort between the church, the Global Communications Network, BAMSI, and the AMR Music Ministry.
This has affected the rich and also the not so rich. This is a pandemic that is facing all of us. And if this continues without a resolution, the whole country may be in this predicament.
Along with a bag of groceries, those in need received a fresh bag of vegetables and a hot breakfast, according to church member Chrislyn Skippings. Mario Lord of the Global Communications Network said it's a joy to do their part to assist while maintaining social distancing.
We're seeing to the needs of persons who really are in need out there, and so this is very important to see this and realize, and we're happy to be a part of being the outreach food drive program that existing throughout the entire Bahamas.
Monique Duncan became emotional when speaking with our news about how hard it's been trying to make ends meet during the pandemic.
You know, people see you day to day and they don't understand. I think it's more stressful for mothers that have children. When you look around and you see nothing, no one offering you nothing. So then, thank God for places like this, that you can come and get a meal. If it's just tuna and rice or corned beef and rice, at least you know that at the end of your day, your children will be able to go to bed hungry.
Donna Silas said that what she has learned from the crisis is that God is in control.
Ain't nothing you can do. What you can't worry about it. You gotta keep praying and God can make a way out of no way. Right or wrong. Ain't no use worrying about it. Ain't no use playing crazy about it. Just take the time that you have inside, pray, and ask God to help you. That's all. He can make a way out of no way.
It's the hands of the Lord speaking to the Bahamian people who want the Bahamian people to repent. Repent of their sins and turn back to Him, because they gone wild. The people gone wild, and God wants them to come back to Him.
Reporting for our news, I'm Giorgio Bain.
Thanks, Giorgio. Well, a woman was fined $1,000 after she was arrested and told officers she was going to get some heads. The Nassau Guardian reported that Bissau Miller admitted violating the curfew at her arraignment before Magistrate Samuel McKinney. When asked by officers where she was going, the woman reportedly said that she was going to a friend to get some heads. Miller didn't deny making the comments, nor did she say what she meant by heads. However, Miller told the court that she was coming from getting something from a friend in Coral Harbor. She insisted that the items were important enough to risk jail or paying a fine. The woman said she could only afford to pay half of the fine. Still to come, the Bahamas Learning Channel makes its way to Exuma. Stay tuned. Welcome back to our news. The Ministry of Education recently launched the second installment of the Bahamas Learning Channel. Students now have access to daily lessons thanks to 2 channels on the cable Bahamas network. That access has been limited on family islands, but technical teams are now working to change that. Jerome Sawyer reports.
The sounds of progress and potential for school kids in Exuma. Cable Bahamas technicians arrived on that island this week for the latest installment in the distance learning channels on the Cable Bahamas network. Phase 1 gave access to New Providence, Abaco, Grand Bahama and Eleuthera. The focus is now on the remaining islands.
No matter where they reside, they're going to be able to see these 2 channels. We're doing that by a couple different methods, a couple different platforms. One is via satellite delivered network. We have an uplink in Miami, and we're actually transporting the signals over to Miami, bringing them back down and covering pretty much all of the Bahamas with that.
Some 22 sites in all have to be activated over the next few weeks. Earlier this month, the Ministry of Education launched the Bahamas Learning Channel as part of its distance learning initiative. With schools closed going on 3 months, the ministry is providing now 2 channels with lessons and instructions. While Cable Bahamas crews move around the islands, the restrictions are creating some logistical challenges.
The big challenge right now is travel. We charter everywhere we go, which is extremely expensive. And also the clearances that we need. We need to have our health cleared. We also have our route cleared on a daily basis. And just making sure that we maximize our usage of the airplane.
Charisma Munro is a family and consumer science teacher at the Ellen Coakley School. She's pleased that students here are getting access to the channels.
There are more households with access to TV than there are suitable and sustainable and reliable internet. So yes, I think that will definitely help. And like I said, some households may only have one device that can access the internet, but just about every household has a television.
Yet there are some inescapable challenges. She teaches clothing and construction and family and consumer science, subjects that require practical instruction, but she's found a way.
It has been difficult, I must say, because I miss, truly, as a technical teacher, I miss that one-on-one interaction with my students. It's hard for me at some point to get certain skills and concepts across to them because I'm not there. We don't have the sewing machines, the scissors, the stove, and all of that. It's been difficult. So I've found myself looking through YouTube videos and creating my own videos to try to send them out to the kids so that they don't lose out on all of this that's out there.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jerome Sawyer.
Still to come, a quick lesson in Kung Fu. Stay tuned. The ancient art of Kung Fu takes lots of practice and discipline. Kyle Joaquin decided to give it a try and took a stab at board breaking.
So when you come here, turn your hand right back and come all the way back here and go through.
Whoa! It's not exactly your thinnest piece of wood, and it's just one tool used in training in Kung Fu. Algado Higgs is a 4th degree senior instructor at Black Lotus Empire and has been teaching some of the country's best for years.
Here we do 4 winds. 4 winds is comprised of 4 different major styles, which is Shotokan, Tai Chi, Taekwondo, and Hung Gar.
Higgs gave me a lesson in breaking wood, something that can either go really right or really wrong.
Everybody likes to break wood. Let's put it like that. Everyone likes to break wood. But there's always a proper technique that you want to go through with breaking wood so that at the end of the day you don't damage yourself, you don't hurt yourself, and at the end of the day you want to get it right pretty much the first time. The truth about it is whenever you're striking, you always want to strike past your target. So I'm not going to strike right here and stop here. Come up a little more for me. Right there. I'm not going to stop right here. I want to actually go past this.
How hard could it be, right? Well, take a look at this guy's knuckles.
This how your hand look afterwards?
This is when you make a mistake. This is the effect.
So he's punching it?
For wrong technique.
How long you been doing this?
Breaking, this is only about twice since I started doing breaking.
Okay, the easiest way I can do it, because this is going to be a crash course. Here, what do you mean? Bring your fingers in, here, all the way here. Your thumb becomes a lock. Your thumb is a lock. Right, good. You feel that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
You can probably tell I've never been a fighter, but it's never too late to learn.
This here is your center, the center of the book, the very center of it. So when you come to the very center, I want you to touch it. Just touch it. Touch it. Touch it. No, you got to touch it. Come on, a little harder. Touch it a little harder. Feel it. A little harder. You want to feel it. Just feel it. Right? Good. Okay, good. A little harder. Okay, good.
And this was it. No backing down now.
Gotta go scroll with you as hard as you could. Let's go. What? All the way, come all the way back. All the way back and as hard as you could, fast as you could. Oh yeah!
For Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Thank you for joining us for Our News Tonight. To catch Our News on the go, download the RevGo Play app. On behalf of the entire news team, I'm Jared Higgs. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.